Good. It's all good, guys. We are live. Hey, it's the Helping Friendly podcast. Welcome, everybody. We have a great crowd here. For those of you listening, you can't tell, but for those of you watching, you can see that we have two special guests here, James, Gabby. Hey, guys.
Hi.
What's up, RJ?
Hey, thank you guys for joining. For Osiris fans out there, you may have heard this week that we announced a new show that was created by James and Gabby called We've Got a Band. And the whole season will be distributed through Undermine. Undermine presents We've Got a Band. And hopefully this is like a multi-season show that then spins off into its own show. But our friends at Section 119 helped us get this going. And so we dropped the trailer this week, and we have 2 episodes, I think, that are going to come out on Wednesday, and then a bunch more after that. So, James and Gabby, thanks for doing all those interviews. And I guess I wanted to just start and just ask where the idea came from and why you all decided to pursue this perspective on the Phish community.
Yeah, I think it started just as like a little bit of gossip. Like, did you see who was at the show last night? And kind of developed into like, oh my God, there are a bunch of people we recognize here. Wonder what their show's like. Wonder what they're up to. So I have to thank you for giving me an excuse to talk to so many cool Phish fans and call it a job.
Yeah, it was. I think it was the MSG April run, and Gabby and I were kind of gossiping as we do at Phish shows, and Gabby was like, it'd be cool to write an article where we figure out like who the different Phish fans are, or who are like download secret Phish fans. They're hiding backstage. They're like not out and proud. And then that conversation it was like, you know what, an article would be fine, but like podcast would be fun. And so then we brought it to you guys, and you guys were like, yes, that sounds very fun. Let's do it.
Yeah, and our friends at Section 119 were like, yes, we will help you make this. So thanks to them. We will be talking more about them. Well, we kind of always talk about them, but we'll be talking about them more on the show. And Gabby and James, you both come from the journalism world. How did you approach these like different than other interviews that you would do as part of your day job, or like other interviews that you've heard with Phish fans, without, and if you want to critique how certain people on this video have done interviews with Phish fans, you're allowed to do that. But what were you bringing from your own kind of experience, and how did you want to approach that?
Yeah, well, this was nice because didn't have to hide my personal bias for Phish. I could let that be free in the article or in the news report. But this was, I think, more of kind of just like a lifestyle, like a friendly interview, just trying to get to the bottom of, what it's like to be at a show where everybody knows you. And this thing that unites everyone that we talk to. What I think is super interesting is they come from such different walks of life, and they all have different talents and different specialties, and they all share this band in common. That's kind of the uniting thread. So getting to talk to all these people around this kind of common topic was really cool.
Yeah, and I feel like the thing that was kind of different for me was that like usually you're trying to get like a clear story out when you're trying to report like an article or a blog or something like that. And this was much more of a like, let's let these conversations unfold the same way that I mean, honestly, a lot like this podcast and a lot of other kind of Phish podcasts that have come before it, like it feels like those backstage or, kind of pre-show, post-show, you're sitting around the patio table, just like, did you see this? Did you feel that? You remember that moment when? And I feel like that is one of the best parts of being a Phish fan. Like the shows are awesome. And, if it was just that, I'd be great. But having those hours long conversations where you get into that first time you heard that one song that sticks out in a way that like really makes your heart sing, like, it was fun getting into that with people who don't get to also talk about this very often when they do press. So that was really fun.
Yeah, those kinds of chats are so easy to have, actually. When you talk with somebody about whatever their main topic is, they have certain things they have to say and, get the plug in and whatever. But when you talk about this common interest, especially one like Phish, which has so much content, so much different ways in which we've interacted with it, different shows and whatever. It's can really be super easy to have and a lot of fun.
James and I, we both came from the website Gawker many years ago, and the ethos of that site was, you want to report not on what everyone on the scene is reporting, but what they're all saying at the bar after they file their copy. And so I think we really brought that to this as well. It's, as you were saying, it's a pleasure to talk to people when they're not actively trying to promote something. And this really was just, talking with your buddies after the show. I think we really hit that vibe.
I'm curious, being on this podcast, working on Undermine over the last couple of years, I always find that like talking to Phish fans, I learned something about my own experience, be it either they got into the band in a totally different way and it like allows this like deepening perspective of how people get into this band or how they view a show or, what their overall experience is like. Was there anything you guys learned about yourself as Phish fans interviewing all of these people and getting all these varying perspectives?
I mean, I know for me, I was always kind of a bashful 3.0 fan, like early 3.0, but like I always, especially, we're talking about, 2000 Phish here today, right? Like I was in middle school and so like I was aware of it, but I was not into it in a way that was, actionable at that age. And so
Sure.
I think being able to talk to fans from different generations who had kind of been through, different phases of the band. We spoke with Aaron Ralston, who, was in Europe for a period of time in the 90s, right? And getting that perspective, like I have friends who are, 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0 even. But I think, I always kind of felt like inadequate as a kind of newer fan in all of that. And then having these conversations and realizing like, actually, wherever you got into Phish is the best Phish. Like that's the Phish that will stick with you. And so like, it really doesn't matter where you start. It's the experience that you're having kind of throughout. Gabby was talking a lot about this idea of collective effervescence during our podcast, and I'll let her speak to it. But I hadn't really considered that, like, it really isn't about how long or how many shows or any of those things. It really was once you're here, now you're here.
We should make t-shirts for you, James, and Ryan Storm and others that say 3.0 fans are people too,
Yeah, really.
It should have an asterisk and say early 3.0 fans.
Early
I like how
yeah.
you did that, James.
James
You like
distinguishing
clarified.
that.
2009 3.0. I was eating the fish
Okay, so
food
you're
ice
legit.
cream in 2002. Oh yeah.
I will say I was able to. I'm editing these podcasts, so I got to listen to the first two with Chris and Austin, and they're really funny and really entertaining and really engaging, and you guys did a great job. So I know, and there are plenty more other than just those, but it was really cool the people you were able to get, and I think everyone's going to really love it. So thanks for putting it together.
It was a lot of fun. What's the thing about about showing up to work? Sorry, my dogs are fighting each other, and
Yeah. So
My dog always barks on this podcast.
part of the show.
Okay,
you
yeah.
do what you
Common
love.
feature.
You never work a day in your life, and I love talking to random people about Phish. So this is good.
Totally. Was there anyone that you had to kind of convince to talk about this publicly? And you don't have to name them, but was it hard to convince people to kind of talk about this, or were people cool with it?
For the most part, I think people were really excited that they were being asked to talk about this band because they are all public figures who are never asked about Phish for the most part.
Yeah.
But yeah, some people were, I think, like maybe wary about, because they did end up being very unfiltered, kind of open conversations, and they were a lot of fun to have. And I think some people wanted to make sure that they were comfortable with us first, but ultimately, we got them.
There are a couple who we would like to have, and we have been hounding incessantly. I won't name those names, but I just want to publicly apologize to their representatives and their friends and teams who we've gone through every single angle in order to ask them. And we're going to keep trying because I think
exactly.
the more we talk with people about this, the more we realize like these kinds of conversations are bringing new fans in. It's bringing a kind of awareness to, we spent a lot of time talking about the, misconceptions around drug culture with the fish stuff, right? And so like it's cool conversations, and I think we're really excited to have more of them.
Yeah, I can imagine that press agents can be, they have those misconceptions themselves, and they're like, well, just because my client likes this band, I don't want them talking about it. So good luck getting through some of those walls.
We actually did encounter the reverse of that, which was the PR rep is a huge Fish fan. Was not sure he wanted to, open up about the band.
That's when you ask the agent, who else you got?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys again, and thanks for coming on the show. And hopefully we'll see you again soon. But there'll be several episodes. I think we have eight or nine at this point that'll come out over the next eight weeks or so. So stay tuned for that. And you can catch. We've got a band wherever you get Undermine for this season. Then, like I said at the beginning, hopefully it'll be a multi-season show and it'll have its whole own life. But James and Gabby, thanks for joining us for a few minutes to talk about it.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
It's our pleasure. We'll see you guys around.
Thanks
All right,
so much.
have a good day, guys.
Bye.
See ya.
All right, that was fun. While we're on the topic, what's interesting about Osiris, or one of the things anyway, is that all three of you have at least one other podcast that you do.
My God.
Yeah,
it's
all
true.
four of us actually. But
We have a lot to say.
yeah, I know, and I'm sure that
Not
our
me.
listeners appreciate it, or if they don't, then we'll find out. But
They're missing out.
Megan, what else you got going on?
Well, I've got Things of Gold, the Snarky Puppy podcast that I have with Ryan, and we just released our 6th episode, I believe, out of 12. And they're getting more and more fun as they go along. We're kind of moving through. We're in 2017 now, and it's been so great for me to learn about the band this way. So that's really fun. And Brian and I are actually releasing the first episode of a miniseries that we did on Monday. Brian, do you want to tell everybody about it?
What?
I do. We have been working with our buddy Brian over at Attendance Bias, doing a mini series called Flocking Outside, and it's an exploration of goose and goose culture and their history from the perspective of 3 diehard fish fans. We're really, really excited about this. We've been talking with Brian for the last couple of months, trying to figure out the structure of this whole thing. What we wanted to do is approach this. Meg and I are huge Goose fans. Brian came to us as Goose curious. So he came to us with, how do I get into this band? What is this band? What's the whole deal? So we kind of track their history since Pete's Fest, which is when Mr. RJB, the Sherpa of Goose for all of us here at Osiris, until we brought Goose Podcast on, started pushing this band with just like prophetic, like from the top of the mountain, just like, you have to listen to Goose. Every other tweet from RJ was, Goose is really funny and they also write really good songs. Did I mention that Goose writes really good jams? So from that moment all the way up until the end of their spring 2023 tour, it's a ton of fun. We dive into a bunch of music. I make way too many recommendations, and Megan makes very intelligent commentary that I try to keep up with.
Thanks,
Sounds
Brian. It was
familiar.
so fun.
Wow.
I hope everybody checks it out. It was like the conversation, speaking of what James and Gabby were just saying, it's like that conversation that everybody's been having offline. And so it was really fun to kind of bring it behind a mic. So I'm curious to hear what everybody thinks about it.
But it wasn't like, it wasn't like Analyze Fish, where it's like,
No, because we're not
like,
funny.
well, I think you guys are funny. See, Jonathan just
We're not
laughed.
that funny.
I agree. I'm not funny at all.
But I mean, was
I
it
agree,
like,
Brian's not funny at all.
were
at
you
all.
guys trying to
There's no humor.
convince Brian?
You
from
know,
Attendance
it's
Bias,
interesting.
or-
So the whole way this started was that, Brian Weinstein and I had been texting a lot about Goose, and he was like, I don't get it. And I was continually over and over again trying to like convince him. And then he was like, well, why don't we do a podcast about this? And I'm like, okay, well, I'm bringing in some backup. And so then I brought in Mr. Brinkman, and, we laid it out. So it wasn't like a convincing him thing, because that's just a boring kind of game if you're not hilarious, like the guys from Analyze Fish. But we kind of talk mostly about what we love about Goose and the influences that we think that we hear in their music and our relationship to the band and how that's evolved and what it's come to mean to us and what we think about the music. And then we created a playlist for him and he goes through that and then we do some deep dives and jams. And so it's really fun. Yeah.
It'll come
What
out on
else?
Monday. The next 3 Mondays it'll be coming out. So check that
Mhm.
out over at Attendance Bias. Just an awesome podcast. Really happy to do something with Brian.
Nice. How many other podcasts, Brian?
I have Beyond the Pond as well. We released our 120th episode. We're trying to keep pace with Jonathan. It's really funny to think back. We started Beyond the Pond right around the same time that Broke Down podcast started, and we've been like tracking it. There were moments of like flurry of episodes, and then both podcasts have kind of just stepped back to like once a month type of thing. But my buddy, co-host Dave Goldstein, and I have been doing this thing where we've been comparing different tours to each other, and we found a lot of similarities musically in the spring 2023 tour and the winter 2003 tour. So we take a couple jams, break those down, talk about what we hear in the tour, what we hear about the band's evolution, and then of course it wouldn't be Beyond the Pond without non-Fish music. So we spin it out, and we took this as an opportunity to go through our 3 favorite jazz records of the 2020s so far, plus like 15, 20 honorable mentions, because I just can't keep myself to 3
Because
albums.
Of
that's how
course.
Brian makes a list.
It's
Yeah.
just how it works. So it's a ton of fun, really fun episode, really good to dive into. Like all these records is kind of where my head has gone if I'm not preparing for HF Pod or listening to the 64 best Goose Jams of the last week in a row. When projects are off, I'm listening to this stuff. And so it was a really, really fun passion project episode. I'd encourage everyone to check that out.
Jonathan, you
Hi.
are leaving us for a while. I mean,
Yeah, I'm just taking
not
some time
spiritually.
off. I'm going to be, offline, recharging, drinking appropriately, all things in moderation, including moderation. But yeah, I have been working on some Broke Down Pod. We had a good little run of episodes. Actually got 2 out this month, the last month. Now it's already June. But let's see, I had James Toth on, Jordan Perry. He's a great Virginia guitar player, finger picker, composer guy. You should check that one out. That was episode 119. And episode 120 was a cat named Aaron Fader, who is he's based in Barcelona. He's an American. He is a player, multi-instrumentalist, and arranger, and he has been working with this African singer named Sia Tolno, and is his band is backing her, and she is also helping front another band, which is basically the same band called Afro Dead, which is kind of Afrobeat takes on Grateful Dead music, and they're coming to the States actually this
That
month.
sounds cool.
Yeah, they
Wow.
got a bunch of tour dates coming. It is pretty cool. There's a cool version of the other one on the episode that they play.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, they're playing all over the country this month, and that was a lot of fun to talk to him. And I got stuff in the hopper for when we come back in a few weeks.
All right. Well,
I just want to address a comment here in our buddy Neil Landry from the great Almost Always There podcast said, "When is the Eggy podcast coming? Inquiring minds want to know." Neil, I know that we connect around Eggy, and I know we connect around a lot of other music, so we should talk about this. I have ideas. At least I have like the germination of an idea. So let's do this, because my God,
Ooh.
Eggy jams, my God.
All right. Well, and I mentioned all these podcasts in the drop today, so that brings it full circle. Okay, we should talk about this show. So we're talking about 2000. We've reached the end. Less than a month after the show, we're going to talk about Fish takes a break, and they never came back, and that was the end of Fish. And it's just crazy, but so that makes this even more interesting. There's only 4 shows from 2000 on Live Fish that have been released.
Yeah,
which
I
is,
saw that.
not
I didn't
right.
remember
Interesting.
that. That's crazy.
It is, and I will say, like, that probably reflects my like listening to 2000. I just don't go to 2000 very much. And then we had one of the saddest show episodes we've ever done on this show was of the last show of 1.0, Megan, where we couldn't really find a lot to say that was good. It was mostly like, yeah, that was kind of a bummer. But
Oh,
so we gotta
sad.
so we gotta make up for that by going back to Hershey 915.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's
Come
do
on.
it.
So this is a good, really fun show. Where do you want to start, Brian? This is your show.
I think we should just, before we jump to Meg's Corner, where was everyone at in September of 2000? Jonathan, let's start with you. You were a young father starting to recapture your jam band outings, but where were you at?
I was, newly married, so I didn't really see anything that summer, I think. But I would see a show a couple days after the show that we're covering, which means I missed my birthday, which is the day before the show we're covering. But I was probably very frequently wearing this T-shirt, which for those
That's
playing
the
at
shirt,
home,
man.
this is a Big Cypress T-shirt that I am wearing right here, and it's got flamingos on it, and it's badass. And I was actively listening to Fish, but also Steve Kimmock Band was looming large after having KVHW having fallen apart, and that's where I was. That's where I was. I was pretty actively. I was all up on E-Tree. I was downloading the crap out of everything I could. We were 2000. We were still burning CDs, I think, and I had a lot of that going on.
What about you, Meg? Where were you at?
I was finishing my last year in college and I was super into the rave scene. So I was going to a lot of raves and dancing all night. And yeah, I was not seeing Fish. And it's sad because when I listen to this show, and I've been listening to a lot of 2000 Fish this week to get ready, and I really like a lot of it. I like these jams. Like, I love the kind of like funk meets space jams that they're doing, where they have these like droning long sounds over this like deep funk beat. Like, this stuff is good. So I'm sad I didn't go to any shows, but I was into like DJs and breakdancing and raves.
I feel like this is the closest Fish to rave culture, so I feel like this would make a lot of sense with you.
I know. I like it.
RJ, what about you?
So I was in the middle. This was like the beginning of my senior year of college. I was in Columbus. I only saw one show in 2000. I think I mentioned that last week, which was Radio City, which is a pretty good one to go to. But
Yeah.
I was sort of like drinking cheap beer and going to house parties and just hanging out in college. So I was like pretty unplugged from the music scene. We would go see shows at the Newport and other places in Columbus, but I was not really like seeing music very much. I was just like in college trying to figure out what I was going to do next. So that's what I was doing, which is not very exciting.
I mean, it's pretty exciting.
I mean,
Being
it
a
was.
senior in
It was
college is
exciting.
like really
Sounds
exciting
fun.
and fun.
Mm-hmm. What about you,
I
Brian?
remember exactly where I was for this show, even though I did not consume this show either in the moment or until years later. I was in the hospital this night. I got major back surgery on September 11th and was holed up for like 10 days, just hanging out, eating bad food. People would come and visit.
Painkillers.
and, painkillers.
you
Once
go.
I got over like the nausea of painkillers and of going under, I went under for like 4.5 hours, and I was like learning how to walk again at this point in time. It was kind of a crazy
oh my God,
week.
that's
And
intense.
a week later, I was back at school, and someone said, "Hey, I have an extra Fish ticket for a show at Allstate Arena. Do you want to go?" And I had the nerve to ask my mom if I could go. I was like on the mend, and she was like, "You're not going to a concert tonight. I don't care who it is." And so I had a chance to see a 1.0 Fish show. But I blame it
Lame.
on my mother. I
Lame.
couldn't attend it. I couldn't attend it. But yeah, that's where I
You
was.
just didn't have the spine for it, Brian.
Oh. You've told me that your mom wouldn't let you go to your chance
Makes
to go to
sense,
1.0
doesn't
show.
it?
And now
Yeah.
the context, I'm starting
Yeah.
to understand more.
I wouldn't let my
Yeah.
kid go either. Like
No
I was
way.
pretty beaten up.
Yeah.
So I got 2 plates and 4 screws and a bit of my hip fusing everything together. So it was
Wow.
a fun time. It's just started sophomore year of high school. Let me tell you, going to homecoming like 3 weeks after back surgery is super fun.
That's awful.
All right. Well, on that note,
Noted.
Meg's Corner is next, but first, I guess before we do that, there's something else in the outline here for Meg's Corner today. Brian,
Oh
do
no.
you know what it is?
I think I know what it is. Do you want me to start? Do you want me to
I
count
think
you guys in?
Yeah, can you count us in?
All right. A 1 and a 2 and you know what to do. Are you guys gonna sing?
It just started.
Nobody wants to be the first one with the note.
No.
Nobody wants to.
Happy birthday
to you.
Oh God, guys,
Aw.
come on.
Yes,
I
it's like a
love-
barbershop quartet.
Happy
Birthday.
Oh, it's
To, come on, someone do this.
you.
We need a click track,
Happy
guys.
birthday,
Dear
Dear
Megan.
Megan.
That sounds good.
Happy
birthday.
birthday to you.
Oh, thanks, guys. I don't know. I feel like Jonathan and Brian, if you worked on it, you could actually like do a really good job with
Yeah.
that. You sounded good. I don't know about you, RJ, but
No,
Brian and Jonathan,
just-
you guys.
If we
sounded good.
worked on it.
We worked
I'm
on it.
yeah,
mostly
if you
just-
worked on it.
Like maybe
I'm
if we
mostly just
sang
staying in the background.
together.
I'm
instead
more
of-
of like
Yeah.
more of a promoter, you know.
Thank you, thank you, guys. I love you.
Thank you,
You're the
Neil.
best.
All right. So, Megan, what was going on in 2000? I know that Fish took a break, but anything else happen?
Yeah, I mean, they're gonna play about 50 shows, which I was kind of surprised at when I looked at the number. I was
Fucking
like, wow,
lazy.
that's I was like, that is so lazy. What are you guys like bummed out or something?
No,
You
I
know-
think sorry, I'll let you
Go
carry
ahead.
on in a moment. The way these kinds of calendars are laid out, the first part of their year was mapped before Big Cypress happened.
Mhm.
Right.
So it was only after Big Cypress that they were like, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly. And I think that combined with like, you know, all those midlife things that like prevent us from pursuing creative pursuits like, you know, marriages, divorces, kids, all these things were kind of coming into their lives in a way. I think that, you know, that brings like draws you away from like the intensity and the kind of exclusivity of being just about fish. So that kind of comes to bear, I think, this year majorly. But also in May, they're going to release Farmhouse, which we know is going to be on Elektra. Heavy Things is going to get onto the mainstream pop radio chart. It's going to come up to number 29. And it's going to be number 2 on the adult alternative charts. Pretty cool. First Tube was also nominated for a Grammy for Best Rock Instrumental Performance.
Is that right?
Whoa.
Yes, I did
I
not
never
know
knew
that.
that.
I know. And
You learn
it's pretty
something
cool.
new every day.
Yeah, you really do. So this is recorded at the barn, except for the live intro to Piper, which is from Us We Go. And there's also going to be a Japanese version of this album, which is going to include Driver and Mountains in the Mist. Ryan Storm, yeah, exactly. Ryan was talking to me when I was recording with him this week for a Snarky Puppy podcast at like 8:45 at night, and I was like hanging on for dear life. So yeah, Ryan, it is tough. It's tough to have a family and do all this. Someday you'll know. But back to Fish. They're going to record a bunch of radio shows in May, which is funny. When I heard them that they were doing that, it was like made me realize how long ago 2000 was. You know, that they were recording a bunch of shows for like the radio, you know, the
Mhm.
real radio. Then they're going to play Radio City. They're going to record a show at the Roseland Ballroom, which is going to be recorded for Hard Rock Live. And that's going to air in early July. They're going to then play 7 shows in Japan, including one of my all-time favorite shows, Drum Logos. Then they're going to come back to the US and they're going to do a tour in June, in late June, in the Southeast, the Northeast, Canada, the Midwest. They're going to tape for Austin City Limits, tape a show for that. And then they're going to announce the hiatus that summer. In August, they're going to release Bittersweet Motel. They're going to appear on 4 different covers of Entertainment Weekly. And then they're going to have their
I have
own
all
fall
4.
tour. You have those, right, Jonathan?
Yeah, they're in an attic, in a box in the attic.
You didn't
but I've
bring
got
them for today? Come on.
I'm a busy man. I got a lot
Okay,
going on right
that's
now.
true. You're going away tomorrow. I'll forgive you. You can bring him next week if you have him. Oh, you won't be here because you're on vacation. Okay.
In
never
a
mind.
regular week, you still wouldn't have brought him, Jonathan. Sorry. Sorry to call you out.
It's because I'm a busy man.
Fair.
It's
Just make sure
true.
you get him for the 2004 episode, okay?
Yeah,
No.
Perfect. Yeah, and then that's kind of how it ended. Ends famously at Shoreline.
Brian's point here, that this might be the most traditional focused actual promotion Fish ever did for an album. It's just really interesting, the timing of the album release and the huge push around this, and then it's like,
And then
see
they're
you
like,
later,
we're done.
we're
And then
done.
we're out.
He's
It's
not
very
wrong.
Fish, though.
They
kinda classic.
kind of did this in '94, but they were young enough and like anti
hmm
everything enough that they didn't do it with any real commitment.
Right.
So they did
Yeah.
a video, but it was ridiculous. They did some radio, but it was either like Purple Dragon straight ahead, also weird, or not. But the stuff they did in 2000 was great. Actually, it was really cool to get. Like, you mentioned, one of you guys mentioned earlier, there's only a few shows on Live Fish, but there's a bunch of good recordings come from radio or television
Mhm.
performances that are really, really great to listen to. And just to,
A lot of great interviews that are available on Relisten from that May kind of radio blitz. It's kind of a fascinating year in that sort of standpoint. But it is wild. Like, I'm just thinking about the time between them leaving in October 2000 and coming back in December 2002. Like, a normal band doesn't say that they're taking a hiatus for that time gap. Like, it's pretty.
Yeah.
no,
it's
it's like
pretty,
they
like,
come
So
back
true.
and they're like, new album, we're going to tour now. Like,
Exactly.
that's
Like
perfectly
the
ready to do.
distance between Farmhouse and Round Room is like a pretty standard album distance. The only difference here is that Fish didn't tour, and so that like was this notable gap. But yeah, it is weird that there was such a push, and all the while they were kind of in the back of their minds like, I don't think that we want to do this right now. I think we want to do other things. So there's a lot of push and pull this year.
So, sorry, Jonathan, were you going to say something?
Nope.
Okay. Brian, because
RJ.
we did so much promo and talked about so many awesome other podcasts, and as much as I love your this year in pop culture, can you just say that it sucked so we can get to the show?
I can actually, RJ. It really sucks. I'll agree with you. There's nothing redeemable.
Just give us the number
It's-
ones.
Yeah,
Just
number
give us
one
the
at
number ones
least.
off each.
I
Okay.
love this. I want to hear
I
it.
actually like the music number one, so this works. Number one TV show is Survivor. Just
Hang on,
It's probably going to be that way
I'm here for
forever,
that.
right?
I still watch it.
It's probably still number one. Who knows?
It's not, but it's
Okay.
It's still good.
It's fun.
number one for music is Madonna's Music, which is actually a fucking bang.
Yeah.
Slow
pretty
nod
good.
because I'm sure that there are like way better Madonna songs out there, but it's a pretty good song. I Will Fight for Like a Prayer. That is my jam. And
yeah.
number one
Uh,
movie is Bring It On, which was
The
cheerleading
cheerleading
movie
movie.
that I didn't see.
Consider
You
it
didn't see
brought.
that? Oh, that's a good movie. I've seen that a bunch of times. It's kind of fun.
It's probably fun.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for doing that. That kind of gets everything across, really.
It does. It's just
Yeah.
it's September. I will say the most interesting thing that happened on this day, other than me being in the hospital and Fish playing Hershey Park, is that this was the opening of the Sydney Summer Olympics,
Okay.
which
Oh,
happened in the
okay.
fall.
It was also
And-
the day after my birthday.
Okay.
Also the
And-
day after
and-
your birthday,
Did that again.
and
And
Ryan Storm
everybody
was born this year.
celebrated the day before. So
with a really good Fish show and
really good Fish
Albuquerque.
show.
Yeah, seriously, you had it.
I didn't go.
Friday, September 15th, 2000, Hershey Park Stadium. The set one is First Tube, Gotta Jaboo, Karina, Birds of Feather, Windora Bug, Run Like an Antelope, Golgi, Bittersweet Motel. It's kind of like a half tab set, half Fish set, which is interesting. There is no, I think Mike Lon Memo, who did the Daily Soundcheck podcast, he found all the sound checks, and I looked, and I do not think this sound check exists. G4J into Mirror in the Bathroom, throwback to our 98
Yeah.
show and Doglog. So okay, first set. This I guess my perspective is this First Tube debuted, in 99, but it kind of became a staple by 2000. They played it so much between 99 and 2000. And it's just cool that they introduced that, like, you know, quite a while ago at this point, and it's still a staple right now. But this like first two Jabu, like the Jabu has like a lightness to it that even though there's like loops, it just feels so much lighter, I guess, than like 99. There's like a buoyancy to it. And I guess I want to ask you guys, do you think they might have been feeling like the pressure is off now that they're like announcing that they're taking a break? I mean, I think it probably gets more heavy as they get toward the end of the tour, but there's kind of a lightness to this show, at least in the first set, that I was a little bit surprised by.
Yeah, we covered kind of, you mentioned earlier the discussion of the last show, but we've covered like the final stretch of shows on here as well, and it does get dark and weird, but I think at this point they're having fun. I think they're almost surprised about having fun, and it might be the pressure release. The end isn't like a week away, so they still got a little bit of room to play, and they're having fun with it, and it really like conveys completely on this show.
Yeah, I mean, I've grown to be a big fan of 2000. It was the first year when I got into Phish where there was almost a sense in at least the parts of the community I was talking to that were like, 2000, they were done, listen to everything 99 and before. And then like I finally went back and listened to a bunch of 2000 shows, and I mean, there's a stretch from 628 to 74 that's up there with my favorite Phish of all time. There's that the Deer Creek run obviously has some great stuff, but yeah, when you get to the fall, the stretch from Great Woods through Kansas, which is 925, which was my backup pick for this show. Pretty much every show in there is hot. RJ and Jonathan, we talked about 917 a few years ago, which is a really good show. The Darien Lake show, which was released as Live Phish 3, is a mind bender, huge jams and Susie and Drowned and an amazing, amazing Albuquerque. Great Reba as well. Allstate's really good. I feel like, to your point, RJ, this is the point of the tour where the pressure feels off. They're playing a lot of familiar venues that they either haven't played in years, like Darien Lakes, or are pretty familiar venues for them at this point in time, like Merriweather Post, like Allstate Arena to an extent. So there's a sense of familiarity. There's a sense of party. There's a sense of the pressure's off. But there's also this like weird, what do we do with all these new songs? Because this whole first set, like you mentioned, is very half Tab, half Phish. What do we do with these new songs? Are we going to continue to push them, or are we just going to rely on classic material? And that ebb and flow is kind of going to define the next couple of weeks of this tour.
I feel like this show has a really like the night after the night feeling to it. Like the night before that show was so incredible. And I feel like this is kind of just has that lightness. And I think the first set especially has really good flow and good energy. And then the cool down songs are like interesting. They're playing like Karina or like Windora, which they've played like, 4 times or whatever. It's like they're picking interesting songs to be playing for cool down songs. They're not dialing this in at all. I really liked this set.
Yeah, I want to just shout out Karina actually, because
I
love
love
that.
this song. God.
Love that so much. I like this version a lot. The previous one played was Big Cypress, which see the t-shirt. But prior to that, they hadn't played it in 10 years.
Yeah.
In
80s.
1989, and they have kicked it around on and off ever since,
Ugh.
very sporadically, but it's
And when it drops, like they
28
played at
shows,
12:30, 19, and oh my God, it was just total magic. It's just so fun when they play a song they started playing in like 1987. It's just
yeah. I was at
a
that show
cover that they don't
too,
play a
and
lot.
it's so funny like how many songs I saw that night that I hadn't seen since Big Cypress and 10 years earlier, 20 years
Wow,
earlier,
really?
whatever
That's
that is
so
math
cool.
wise.
Yeah.
Super wild. Anyways, we digress. What a great fun set. It has
Mhm.
strong energy and birds. The Windora Bug is just, that's a wacky song, but I love it.
I like it. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Bring that
And,
back.
And I like
Only
the
been
call
played
to end.
two times. This was the
Isn't that
last
crazy?
performance to date,
Yeah.
and I feel like this is like the most 99 2000 original.
Yeah.
And I would just, I
Mhm.
would love to hear this again. The wordplay, the like kind of back and forth, the
Yeah.
dropouts into the Calypso jamming. It's really, really nice.
Mike's
Yeah.
voice sounds like so perfect in this song. It's like deep and resonant,
With
and there's
the
like such a
wubbo.
good bass line. Yeah, and then there's like at the end, Fishman's doing like a trip hop beat. It's really cool. I think they would do like an amazing version of this song now.
Yeah,
Bum,
maybe
bum, bum.
maybe the Trey Trio will bring it back. The
I forgot that
that'd be
it had
nice.
like the meat breakdown in it because I don't
Yeah.
think
It's
that
right
always.
towards
I
the
don't,
end.
Mhm.
yeah, I don't think that happens in the tab versions, but maybe it does. I don't know. I don't know, guys.
I don't know.
Shout out Tony Markellis. I'm with you
Yeah.
there, Ryan.
Right there.
I love the call to end the set with Bittersweet Motel too.
Yeah, this is
love
a
it.
month after
Mhm.
Bittersweet came out. We're obviously semi halfway between Erie. Well, we're a little bit east of Pittsburgh at this point in time, but regionally, we're not going to get any
close
closer.
enough.
Not going to Burgettstown at this point.
Is that when that movie came out?
It came out in August.
Okay.
August
Mhm.
2000.
I saw it at the Kennedy Center when it came out, which seems like a weird
Oh,
place
wow.
for that, but that's where I went, and it was weird. And there were balloons in the Kennedy Center, just as every time something fish-like happens there, and it shouldn't go that way. People just be good. But anyways,
I think our buddy
Um,
Brian makes a. Sorry, RJ.
No,
just
go for it.
A cool point here that I think we're going to talk about more when we get into set 2. But I think Windora, I think First Tube, Jabu, Karina, they all kind of have this where there's clearly stuff happening underneath the surface in these jams, and there's a lot of space and there's a lot of patience. And Mike is really impactful in these jams and in these songs. I would kill for more soundboards from 2000 because, like we've heard, I'm like that Drowned. If you listen to that from the night before on Odd, no knock on the taper, it just, you can't pick up everything that's happening under the surface from 30 rows back. And so to get that is just such an interesting view of where the band was at that point in time.
I just wanted to say, so the Antelope is pretty pretty fun there, just in terms of the, it's a nice 1.0 version in that it gets pretty intense. And Tom comes out with his daughter Anna, who was turning 7 at the time. I asked him about this yesterday.
cool.
Awesome.
And this was in the era when they all had young kids, and he said that Anna got tired, and fortunately there was like a whole babysitter set up, so he was able to have Anna go with the other kids, and he could continue to watch the show. But that was cool. That was like a end of 1.0. Had Tom come out for the Antelope lyrics, but he was able to bring Anna. Anna is now a Fish fan. I've been to many shows with her. She's amazing. She's awesome, just like Tom and their whole family. So it was cool to hear. I forgot about that aspect of it until I heard it.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked him about it, because I saw that in the set list, and I was like, I wonder what he remembers. So nice.
Anything else in the first set before we move on?
I think it's just interesting, like I said earlier, that there's such a focus on the new music. Like when Antelope hits, it's almost like, because even Birds is the most familiar song in the first 5 or 6 songs of the show, and Birds is only 2 years old at this point. When they play Antelope, you have Antelope Golgi pairing. It's just like, okay, we needed a little bit of classic Fish before we got out here from the set, and you get a sense of how much inspiration they're still finding in the old songs, because it is quite a good Antelope.
Can I point out that it's kind of a short show? Like,
quite.
Yeah, I
set 2
noticed that when I was
delivers,
listening.
like,
Yeah.
and we'll get into how it delivers after, in a moment. And set 1 is good too, but it's not 2 hours. It's under 2 hours and 20 minutes. It's not entirely inconsistent. Like the Blossom show is about the same length, but the Merriweather show that I was at, which is the very next show of tour, 2 hours and 55 minutes. So a little bit
Wow.
all over the map, night to night, but this is the short range, I guess.
I think this is kind of the last. Well, we'd see this into 2.0, but this is kind of the last gasp of just, we're going to go on when we want to go on. We're going to play as long as we want to play, and then we're going to get off. Who knows what setup they had in terms of clock management on stage, but it definitely feels like they're just like, all right, I think we've set our part. Let's play Bittersweet. we'll leave, we'll come on, we'll do a 5-song set, and then we're done.
Might be tighter curfew situation at different venues too.
That's
So,
true as well.
but when you couple that with the we'll go on when we want to go on, leads to things wrapping up maybe a little shorter than you might hope.
I just want to point out the comment here on the screen that they do seem to sound a little better, the audience recordings from 99.
Yeah.
And what someone should do someday is like track the sound of these audience recordings over the years with like the changes in technology. Because I just wonder how much that changed.
I
Maybe
mean,
not between 99 and 2000, but obviously it changed over the years in terms of what was available and
the
what
funny
people
thing
were
is,
using.
is that the tapers were not like they improved tech to varying degrees, but at the same time, you get really good tapes with 20-year-old mics. Depending,
True.
it's all about placement. It's about the room. It's about the PA. So you can some rooms you can't make a bad tape. Some rooms you can. Actually, any room you could make a bad tape, but you have to try or not try. I don't know. You have to really fuck it up. But if you take the same rig and you put it right behind the soundboard in every room, it's going to sound like that room on that night.
Yeah. All right, let's take a quick break and then we're going to come back with set 2. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Jonathan, you want to tell us about set 2 here?
What about set 2? Set 2 opened with Piper into the Lizards, then Tube into a jam into When the Circus Comes, and Character Zero ends the set with RJ's favorite Possum as the encore. And I think it's pretty good. I mean, they really come out of the gates. You can tell there's no like YouTube first song preview here because they don't
Yeah.
waste any time and they get right into it with this Piper. I don't know. I don't even remember. I listened to it again this morning. Does it build or does it just come out of the gates?
It's a slow build. It's a very classic 2000s Piper. I was thinking as I was listening to this, just how many great versions are throughout from like
Mhm.
99 to 2004. Like this is really just, this is a song that spilled over into 3.0 and there's been great versions, but this is a song that really bridged the end of 1.0 into 2.0, where when they played this, they just played standout versions of the song. This one very much like, a lot of the jams from the era is really centered around the groove. Trey plays a lot of chords and he puts on the sirens and he moves over to the keys. And so you end up like the jam lives on how good the back end of Fish is and how good Mike and Fishman are at playing around with the groove, but also holding that groove really solid. And I'm curious for you guys, did you like Trey's keyboard rig during this era? Because there's kind of differing opinions, and it's a staple of these jams.
Sometimes. I I think largely I did. I thought that Trey was digging for something creatively,
Yeah.
and he was doing something different himself, but also opening kind of like he did with the drum kit, but differently, opening the
Mhm.
floor to other things from the rest of the band too. So he wasn't trying to compete with Page. He was playing samples and doing stuff that Page wasn't really doing. And I think I think it opened the sound up in interesting ways. RJ, you were there? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is when I was listening to it this morning, I was thinking like things start to get really kind of serious in here, and it almost reminds me of like a summer '95 jam in places. It gets
Mhm.
like
Mm-hmm.
very dissonant, cacophonous. It's sort of like
Yes.
there's like a lot going on, but Mike is much more like Mike is like very dynamic over the kind of noise that it's really interesting. It's a really interesting jam. I think like us again, not to go say this again, but I think a soundboard of this would be
I
fantastic.
know.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
no. It's when Brian was talking earlier about the need for soundboards and cited the Darien show. I'm thinking the whole time about this Piper and the things that we're not
Yeah.
hearing, because we're hearing great stuff. There's so much more here, I'm sure.
There's
Yeah.
stuff right before the fade out where it sounds like 3 a.m. at Big Cypress, and like getting
Yes.
that in just pristine quality where you can actually know all the stuff that's happening below the surface and what they were hearing. Because Hershey, there's a comment from Incredible Perp that it's like Dick's East. It's this big,
Mhm. It's
wide
huge.
open stadium.
It's a
and
stadium.
yeah, and
Yeah.
their sound just like drifts out, and it's a cool place to see them. I saw them in 2010. There's a lot of space. You move around, but like there's a lot of space, and that I think is getting lost a little bit here in the tape. But Meg, what are your thoughts on this Piper?
Yeah, I love it. I feel like you can tell right away that they're just like ready to get weird and to like get out there in the jam. Like they are not wasting any time. And I just love that kind of droning, hypnotic feeling and how the drama of it just builds and builds. And I think Trey on the keyboard really works here. He's like adding in all these layers. I felt like this jam was like, this reminded me like how much I like 2000 Fish and how I need to listen to more of it. Like this, there's like the combination of the two kinds of jams that I like love from 2000 Fish. And that's like the ones that sound like this tube where like it sounds like 97 and 99 like had a baby, where it's like this funk and then like weirdness over it. Or this kind where it's like really hypnotic and droning and like you get lost in it. So this set is so perfect because it has both of those.
I want to say more about Piper real quick. You know, Brian, you alluded to it. In 2000, Piper has a big year, and if you look at like the
Mm.
jam charts, there are blocks where every single version is a jam charted version, and there's only one other year where they do that, which is 2003, where it's just huge blocks of great versions of Piper. And in December of 2003, I named my baby Piper for that reason. Not because of jam charts, but because 2003 was a good year for Piper. 2000 was a great year for Piper as well. And this is just one example of many. And yeah, get your 2000 Piper projects going, people, because there's just such good music coming under the name of that song.
You
And
had
then
a
there's the tube.
2000. Didn't you have a 2000 Piper project?
No.
Okay.
That sounds like work.
No, I'm talking about you have a child named Piper who was not born
Yes.
in 2000.
No, she was born in 2003.
Okay. You had a 2003 Piper project. The one thing I promise I'll stop talking about the releases, but there are a lot of live baits that have summer and fall 2000
True.
jams on them. And I
Yeah.
don't know if someone somewhere has a spreadsheet of all the live bait releases with that you could like sort by years. But maybe I'll do that like when I retire. But they have been releasing
Do it
tracks
on the
Live
train.
Bait. You can do it on the train.
There
But
you
so
go.
there is stuff out there. There's like the Mango Song Jam from Merriweather. There's like
Yeah.
some Toronto.
They
stuff.
just
I mean,
released a Piper on the most recent live bait from right outside of Denver here, the 927 show, which is a really
Right.
good September 2000 Piper. A little bit more like straightforward groove than this one is. This one's a bit more atmospheric, but still really cool to hear that. That and the gumbo.
By atmosphere, you mean
Mm.
which I like.
Okay, so Lizards, and then this tube into Jam, which is again noted by our friends at Fishnet. So the Jam is, I was trying to figure out, is the Jam after the Jam? Because there's a Jam in Tube,
Because the
and
song
then it
kind of
goes back
stops.
into Tube.
The song is basically over.
Yeah,
They like
and then they
stop,
pick it up again.
and it's
Like almost like Dayton '97
like
when they
3
pick
or
up the
4
Jam
count,
post.
and then they're like back to jamming.
Back
Yeah.
to Jam.
Yeah,
That's
like
Jam.
the,
'Cause there's also a Jam in Tube.
there's
Yeah,
a jam in
which
tube,
is
but it's only
awesome.
it's only an 8-minute version. It's like 7 minutes and 50 seconds of tube, but you know,
But it's so
it's
good.
it's like two sides of a coin. Like the Dayton one has that amazing, like you hear Trey go, "Do you want to start that jam again?" And like you,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know how
He was
excited
talking
they
to
were,
me.
like for what
He was
they.
talking to me, and I was like,
He's
"Yes,
talking to you.
do
And
it,
you're like, yeah, dude, just
Do
do
it,
that.
Trey.
do it."
Whereas this, like the tube ending is initiated at around 6:30. At 7:50, they're done, but there's still the sirens, and those just go for like 30
Mhm.
seconds, and then they come back, and
And you
you
can
know at
just
that point,
picture them looking at each other Okay.
You like it? You like
Let's
it?
do
I don't want
it.
to play a
And then
song.
drop right back in. Yeah. So good.
Oh, it's so
So
good.
good.
It's like Fishman is just like pushing the tempo like right off the bat, and there's like this sped up funk like already, and like 2 minutes into the song, it sounds like faster and more funky. And Trace using like weird effects, but like 3 minutes in, and then they lock into this like melody. And this is that moment that I'm talking about when these two amazing years of Fish have like a baby, because it's like super, super funk on top of like all the like weird siren droney effects, and it works so well. It sounds effortless, like it's really good. I love it. And then like when Paige shifts into the piano, it's like the whole jam just like just turns like slowly, and all of a sudden they're in this like total mood shift, and it just turns into this like driving like dark train. This is so good.
It's one thing that
I'm
we
pictu- Well, I was just gonna say, I'm picturing if we had a good meme maker, you could have like two years and a baby with like a picture of Trey from '97 and a picture of Trey from '99, and then this and then this in a crib.
Maybe I'll
Sorry.
ask Ryan Storm to make that for me. Does
Yeah,
he do memes? He
Madison
must know
Newbon
someone.
would do that.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah,
somebody
exactly.
his
Ryan does
generation,
memes.
like that's what the youth does.
The youth.
these days.
That'll
Sorry,
be my
sorry,
birthday
Brian.
present.
Brian, I think you were gonna say something that had actual words.
Ryan was going to just describe a different meme.
He's
I
already
was
on it.
no. I just I find it fascinating that Mike is like the center of these jams. Like every time I go back and listen to it, it's the era of Fish where Mike is like holding everything down, but he's also front and center. I think also, Maggie made the point of Paige going to the baby grand, and it just as we're leaving 1.0 here in this series, and the next 23 episodes are all going to be either like hiatus or 2.0 or 3.0 stuff. It's going to be a very different side of Fish. Like we're leaving the 1990s behind, we're leaving the 1.0 era. And it reminds me of the episode that we did on 93, 8/26/93, about 2 months ago at this point in time. And one of the things we talked about was how important Paige's grand piano was to not just the playing, but also the jams, and how it like adds this foundation in a lot of ways to the band's jamming. And you heard this in 94 in that Bozeman Tweezer we did, in 95 in that super high energy show. As we moved on, like Paige would move more towards the clav, he would move more towards the organ to try to give atmosphere and to give additional funk notes and staccato ideas. But when he goes back to the baby grand, it just ties us back to Fish being a classic rock band, like being a rock band, like improper, but having this ability to tap into space and atmosphere and experimental playing where the baby grand doesn't take away. It's not like it's all that he knows how to play and the other keyboards would add more sound. It adds a texture that like sounds so much like Fish to me, and I love it.
Melodic percussion. That's what a
That's
piano
it.
does.
Exactly.
Well, okay, so we're getting toward the end here of this show. Is there? I think the Circus Character Zero Possum Encore is like, wow, just
Awesome.
fantastic.
Just
The
blast
circus
you right
hits
off
different,
and out
though.
the door.
I feel like
Yeah.
the circus hits different, like knowing that they're a few weeks
Yeah.
away from hiatus. Like I was listening to it and I was like, God, how can Trace sing this? Like it must have been so emotional knowing they were going to stop singing a song like this.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he
that's
was
the
just
message.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So how do you guys think they were like feeling at this time? I mean, it's impossible to answer, but just how would you, if you had to guess?
Or was it like this summer when they were coming off a couple shows and they're like, is this the right thing that we should be doing? Or I don't know. I don't know. I feel like how could you play a show like Darien Lake and then this night and be like, yeah, we should probably stop doing this. It's just like it shows how much was going on for them personally that they could still play this well and still want to end it or take a break.
I mean, it's not like later.
No, it
things
doesn't feel
weren't
like that. Mm-mm.
perfect, great, but it was also they were, they felt like they had hit that peak and didn't know where to go up. And previously,
Yeah.
in say 1996, Fish had hit the peak at New Year's before. They just kept kind of pushing and doing the thing. But here they are, a few years older, and I think they just I mean, they felt like they needed to just kind of step away from it to let it find its own new space. And so I think what we were saying earlier, RJ, is that I think there was at this point in it, they're good with this decision. They're happy with
Yeah,
this
they seem
decision.
like
They
them.
see a way out. At least those who most want this to happen. I would be interested to hear Mike talk about his feelings on this because Mike has always been when Fish was at its worst. I'm going to just say there are times when Fish has been at their worst. Mike has usually not been the problem. Mike is always delivering during those times. Mike, I would be, I've never, I don't recall reading anything from Mike saying, yeah, well, I feel like we kind of maxed out and we needed to just stop and just, figure out who we were as humans and da 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 da. I don't remember him saying that. That's not that's not a Mike sort of thing to say. I think Mike was happy to develop other projects because that's who he is and he has his own voice that he wants to express that doesn't always come through in Fish. But yeah, Mike's rock solid with this band, and otherwise though, yeah, I think that they were like, this is gonna we can still play. We're gonna do
Yeah.
good shows, but we need that break.
So, okay, so we're next week we're going to be in 2001, and then the following week we're going to be in 2002. So we have 2 weeks in a row of non-Fish. So we've made it through from 1983 to 2000, and I'm proud of us for actually doing this with some touring in the middle. What do you guys? What's your one takeaway at this point in terms of where we are and the end of 1.0 from doing the project?
I think for me, to think about this band at this point in time and the arc that they went through, I've always thought of like the narrative naturally ending at the end of 1995 and something new having to be born. And at this point, going fast forwarding from 95 to end of 99, the big Cypress Festival, and then what 2000 ended up being, it feels like the second chapter, but it also does feel a bit abridged because I don't think that we get like a natural conclusion to this era, honestly, until they end.
Brian, I think we have a slight
Mine is-
technical difficulty.
Interneting out there a little bit. Just too bad. I kind of wanted to hear where that was going.
Jonathan, do you want to pick it up and then Brian can join back in to finish out his thought?
I'm not sure I can pick it up where he was thinking,
Yeah.
but I think I have enjoyed viewing this arc again, as carefully as we have. Obviously, I was along for the ride through a lot of this when it really happened, and I had very strong feelings at this point or when I found out that they were going on hiatus, and those feelings involved things like, what the fuck? These guys are great. Why would they want to stop? Now I'm a
Feelings
little,
like that.
yeah, just kind of like that. I'm not sure if those are the right words.
Yeah.
But nowadays I kind of get it. I still think,
Mm.
as evidenced by my thoughts, and I think y'all's thoughts on this particular show, that they were playing very well, and they
Yeah.
probably were mistaken to think that the music wasn't hitting hard, but obviously how they feel about it is totally different and always has been from what the audience is receiving. So
Yeah, fair. I want to say, Jonathan, if it's okay with you, just the flip side of that happens 2 years later.
Oh,
Or
yeah,
it's
exactly
4 years,
right.
4 years after this, but 2 years
Yeah.
after they come back, where they like kind of have to stop because like they might die. So
No.
it's kind of
Yeah.
better
Yeah.
to like go out on top in this case. Well,
And I think that's kind of
hindsight.
what they wanted to do at this point, right? I feel like that's kind of what their
I mean, they
decision
weren't
was.
quitting. They were just like,
Right.
we don't know.
Let's pause while we're still good. I think it's been so cool listening to the shows chronologically like this and really like thinking about where they were contextually and learning more about the year. And just, I've loved this project so much. And I think about how the beginning just seems like this hunger and drive and this constant like push towards just achieving, not in the sense of like, you know, accolades or money, or achieving like this artistic kind of purpose that they had in a way that is just so like organic and true. And I think that's why they got to where they were. And then it's just from like 95 on, it's just reinvention, 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 and how hard that is to do. You know, that just takes such a toll on you to have to kind of like reach the top and then consistently reinvent yourself. And this is, you know, these are artists that have to reinvent themselves like all year, every year. Like, it's like, you know, they're not somebody that comes on and has to write one play a year, which is already a lot, or like
That's
do
insane.
one thing. You know, they have to literally reinvent themselves within like 4 months off and come back and deliver something totally new and incredible that's going to like inspire this dedicated, rabid fan base. And to do that over and over and over again is like, it's exhausting. And you can see why it kind of led to where it led. And it's been so amazing to see what this band does after that. And I'm so excited to get into that. Like, it's sad to leave 1.0, but it's also like, it's pretty inspiring after some dark stuff where we end up. And I'm just excited to get into 3.0 more, because I feel like there's so much there and there's so much to get into. And this whole experience has just taught me so much about the band and their music and just my relationship to it. It's been so awesome.
I want to you're spot on. Like, a part of me wants to counter like the notion that they had to reinvent themselves every year, but that was their notion. That was the thing.
No, exactly.
We
It's up to
didn't
them.
require that, and they
No.
seemed to push themselves to do it. And so, oops, mistake. No, you set a high bar for yourself, and then you got to keep climbing it. That's crazy. Glenn Russell here in the chat makes an interesting point, and he's spot on. I think he says, I recall a sense that this was going to be like the Dead's 1974 break. Not everybody was on board, but everybody knew it was a break and not the end, is what he says. And that's true. But, you know, when the Dead did it in 74, nobody knew when they'd be coming back, if they'd be coming back. Things happen. And that was true with Fish. It was like, yeah, oh, we're not breaking up, you know, we're just not scheduling anything. But even the band was astute enough to recognize the possibility that it might not happen, because things happen. Which is why, you know, when you read what they, you know, said about after the Shoreline show, you know, when the band had their time together in that room before they left, you know, it was a heavy private moment because they didn't know when it would be
Yeah.
back. So, but we all know they're coming back, and that's great. And I think some of us will be back next week too, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, unlike the 74 Dead break, we know our break will only be 1 week, and we'll be back next Friday.
Yeah.
Jonathan will not be here because he will be on a vacation where he will be responsibly vacationing. And we're very excited for him. And he will be back in a few weeks.
When I'm back.
So, yeah. Thanks, Jonathan. And thanks, Megan. And Brian decided to start his break early. So thank you, Brian. And we will get the rest of your thought next time. All right. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Thanks, you guys, for joining us live and sending the comments and whatnot. And yeah, happy birthday, Megan.
Thank you.
Happy
Thanks so much, Glenn.
birthday,
Thanks, everybody.
Megan. It's